Hey there, Pyromaniacs, it's showcase season once again. Initially a time for a bunch of suits to gather at the now long-dead Electronic Entertainment Expo has now kinda just become an industry tradition removed from any specific convention, although it's mostly spearheaded by Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. Every year I like making videos where I compile my thoughts on the showcase and which games really stood out to me. Last year I made one big video where I covered the big three along with Summer Game Fest proper, but this year I want to split them up into individual videos. I'm gonna be completely real with you guys, the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to strike the iron when it's hot. This choice is entirely algorithmic. So without further ado, here are my thoughts on the first showcase of Summer Game Fest, which is, as I assume you already know considering you clicked on this video, Sony's State of Play. They started out the show on not exactly the most exciting presentation, showcasing a new Lumines game, which for those who don't know is more or less just Puyo Puyo or Dr. Mario. Not exactly a huge blockbuster franchise. That being said, the way this one looks reminds me a lot of Tetris Effect. And Tetris Effect is quite possibly the best version of Tetris. So I guess if you like Tetris Effect and you like Lumines, then I guess this is a cool presentation, but it's just a weird one to start a showcase with. If I were to guess, I would think that this showcase was probably supposed to start with Marathon, and then certain events ended up leading to that segment getting cut. That's just a theory though.
Game theory.
But what they showed after Lumines was far more interesting because apparently Pragmata's still happening. For those who don't know, Pragmata was a game announced like 5 years ago and is being developed by Capcom. Even after this trailer, we still don't know a ton about the game, but it seems to follow an astronaut and some little robot girl named Diana exploring some sort of abandoned space station in the wake of some cataclysmic event on Earth. Kinda gives me the vibes of like The Last of Us in space. I'm not sure why this game was in development hell for so long, but it does look kinda cool though. Next thing that caught my eye was Romeo is a Dead Man, a new Suda51 game. It's a Suda51 game. That's really all you need to know. Although, this very well might be the most Suda51 game that Suda51 has ever made. Not even 20 seconds into this trailer, I immediately knew it was Suda51. What's the premise? It doesn't matter. It's an insane, over-the-top action game with an over-designed protagonist with some sort of weird, inanimate object that shouldn't talk, but talks. Just saying that describes most Suda51 games, and it describes this one too. And I say that in the most endearing way. Next up is Silent Hill F, which is the first major Silent Hill release in a while. Technically, it hasn't been that long ago since the last Silent Hill game, because obviously last year we got the Silent Hill 2 remake, and also that short free-to-play game, A Short Message. But this appears to be the first major release from Konami proper. Not a remake, not a short little free-to-play thing, but an actual full game. And this is a big deal, considering the last major Silent Hill release was Silent Hill Downpour all the way back in 2012. And this appears to be kind of a new take on Silent Hill. And honestly, it's kind of a confusing take on Silent Hill, considering it's not set in Silent Hill. Like, I kind of get what they're doing, because previous games, Downpour and Homecoming, were kind of criticized for being too westernized, too Americanized, but it feels like a bit of an overcorrection to go from being set in Silent Hill, a canonical city in Maine, to now being set in 1960s Japan. That being said, I cannot stress enough that I am not technically a fan of Silent Hill. I've just kind of followed the series from the perspective of an outsider, so I could be completely off base here, and this change actually makes perfect sense to fans. And then, if you know anything about me, then you know I have to talk about Digimon Story Time Stranger. If I still haven't stressed it enough, I love Digimon. And Time Stranger is the first game in the Digimon Story series to come out in a decade, with the last one being Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. And no, I do not count Hacker's Memory as its own game. It is a standalone expansion for Cyber Sleuth. So the fact that we are finally getting a new Digimon Story game after all this time is such a relief. And I just gotta say, if you're a Shin Megami Tensei fan and you're looking for something to tide you over until Persona 6 comes out, this is your game. I implore you to play Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory, and when Time Stranger comes out, Time Stranger as well. Hell, if you're a Pokemon fan that's just totally jaded with the series and are looking for a game that gives you that same feel while also giving you a new experience, and somehow still haven't played these games, what are you doing? Do it for your own sake. Reject pocket monsters, embrace digital monsters. In other news, Final Fantasy Tactics is getting a remaster, and I will say to this exactly what I said about the Dragon Quest Trilogy remaster. Chrono Trigger. Give me a Chrono Trigger remaster, damn it. I know you can. I know you're listening. You're remastering all these other games. Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Bravely Default. All you gotta do is just do it. Just let me give you money, Square. But yeah, the fact that we're getting a Final Fantasy Tactics remaster is kind of cool. I haven't played the games before, so I think that's, I just might pick it up at some point because, I enjoy Final Fantasy and I haven't played this one. I've always heard really good things about it, so. Speaking of remasters and re-releases, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it kinda is. This is a collection featuring the first 4 Mortal Kombat games, which is a big deal considering this is the first time they'll be available on modern hardware in over a decade. The last time we got a collection like this was the Mortal Kombat Arcade Collection that released in 2012 to coincide with Mortal Kombat 9. Although this seems to be even better than the Arcade Collection, considering it seems to include every single version of all these different Mortal Kombat games. And it also, for some reason, includes the Game Boy Advance version of Deadly Alliance, which is interesting. Not sure why they didn't just put the actual Deadly Alliance on there, but still, it's cool that we're getting a collection like this. I might pick this up at some point, actually. Because even though I'm not as big of a Mortal Kombat fan as I was when I was a teenager, it would still be cool just to have all of these games together in one place. Next up is, to my recollection, the only PSVR title that they showed off, which is Thief Legacy of Shadow, a new installment of the Thief series that has been on ice for over a decade at this point, with the last installment being a less than stellar reboot made back in 2014. Personally, I'm actually not a huge fan of the Thief games. I've only actually played that reboot that I mentioned, but it's always cool to see an old game series get a new lease on life like this, and I'm always going to be there to cheer it on whenever it happens. Sea of Remnants is the next game I want to talk about because it looks insane and I love it. It is a pirate-themed RPG, and as a fan of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, that's all I needed to know to get excited. That being said, it's also a free-to-play roguelike, which does dampen my excitement a little bit, but I just can't get over just how charming this thing looks. And if it can give me even a fraction of what I enjoyed about Assassin's Creed 4, then I think it'll be worth it for me to at least give it a try. There's kind of a trend in this state of play of reviving series that have either been long dead or just untouched for many years, and this next one is no exception. That being 007 First Light, which is the first James Bond video game in over a decade, with the last one being 007 Legends back in 2012, which sucked and is the reason why we haven't seen a new video game until now. This one, though, is being made by IO Interactive, the people behind the Hitman games, and seems to be a new story following a young, inexperienced James Bond before he became Agent 007, which is a really cool new place to take this franchise. When this game was first announced, I was kind of worried that it was just going to be a Hitman game but with James Bond in place of Agent 47, but it looks like they're adding enough of that James Bond energy to set it apart. I'm actually really excited for this one, and is probably one of my favorite things to come out of this showcase. Something that was initially kind of confusing that Sony announced at this is apparently they're developing their own arcade-style fight stick for the PS5. And why I say it was initially confusing is because it all started to make sense when they showed off Marvel, baby! Marvel took on Fighting Souls, a Marvel fighting game developed by Arc System Works, the studio that made Guilty Gear, BlazBlue, and Dragon Ball FighterZ. If you don't count crossovers and mobile games, this is the first Marvel fighting game since 1995 with Marvel Superheroes by Capcom. And if you do count crossovers, then the last one was Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite in 2017, which is the worst Marvel vs. Capcom game. You can tell just by looking at Marvel Tokon that they are heavily inspired by the gameplay of Marvel vs. Capcom, to a point that it kind of feels like a spiritual successor to those games. Even the 4v4 tag team element feels like something that Capcom would have done in one of those games. I was not expecting this state of play to be the showcase of revivals, but that's what this kind of ended up turning into. Last year's State of Play at Summer Game Fest felt more like an obligation than an actual attempt to show off their upcoming products, so I didn't really come into this one with the highest expectations. But I was pleasantly surprised with this. They had quite a few good things to show. Not a ton of big first-party games, but the first-party stuff that they did show off was cool. Overall, I think this was a decent showcase. Not knock your socks off life-changing, but surprisingly good. With all that said, next up I'll be covering the official Summer Game Fest showcase proper, so stay tuned for that in the next couple days. Until then, thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like and become a pyromaniac yourself by subscribing. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.